Hi everyone, my name is Heath Schumacher. I work over here at Coldesi. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be replacing the printhead for a DTG Viper. Some of the different tools that we're going to be needing are a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver, a number 1 Phillips head screwdriver, and then we're also going to be needing print heads and dampers. The dampers are special for the Viper. You have 4 normal DTG dampers, and then you also have the special Viper white dampers. These can all be found on the Coleman & Company website. What's different about the two of them is one has a heat shrink around the threading of the top flange. So getting into the repair now, and this is the print head for the 4880 Epson DTG. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be doing is powering down the machine and making sure that it's completely unplugged. We don't want any power going to this while we're doing these repairs. Damage could occur. So what we'll do first is we'll come in here and we're going to manually move the head over by pushing the release button on the back side of the print head carriage. And that way we can manually move the head over to the right. So we're going to start taking these covers off. You'll use a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver, and we're going to remove the gray plastic cover first. The first screw will be right here on the top, and we'll set these screws to the side. There'll be another one down here on the side. A magnetic screwdriver does help, so just in case you drop those screws. And then there's also one in the back corner right down here. Once we remove the 3 cover screws, we're able to lift this plastic cover straight off. Don't take it completely off because there are wires connected to it. There is this one light right here, and to get that out you will either have to push it up with a small tool to go up in there, or something to that order. So I'll take a nice thin needle nose pliers and kind of push the little O-ring out. Then we can remove the little O-ring that holds the light in place, and we can set that to the side. Then we can pull that light directly out of that hole and set the cover to the side. Alright, so now as we're looking in here, I'm going to basically give you a description of what you're looking at here. These are FFC cables. This is how data gets up to the print head, the media sensors, and all the different portions inside this head carriage. We have a white ink manifold system. This is basically for the WIMS. It circulates through here and then distributes the white ink through 4 separate dampers. You have your 4 ink lines: yellow, magenta, cyan, and then black. And they do have to stay in this order or you'll have some Art Deco prints when you put it back together. Alright, inside here, this is a little jump board and your encoder sensor. And that's how it gets its data up there as well. Back here is that head release I was talking about. To manually release the head, if you push this down, it unlocks it, and that way you can move it off of the capping station. Alright, so now what we're going to do is start taking this component out so we can get to the dampers and the print head. First thing we'll do is take off this little FFC holder. It just kind of tucks those FFC cables out of the way so they don't get boogered up. Next, we will pull gently on this FFC cable straight back so that way I unplug it from this board. Be careful not to bend that. We'll just kind of pull these out of the way, and then I can take off the first of the wires that plug back into this jump board. You have to be gentle with it, and you just wiggle it back and forth and it'll slide right out. And we have another one that has a 2-prong. Just wiggle it back and forth and it comes out. So what I'll do is I'll take these and kind of get all these wires out of my way first. Take this wire around here and this one over to the side. Alright, next thing we're going to remove is the bracket that holds this damper compartment into the machine. So we'll use that number 2 Phillips head screwdriver again, and we're going to remove the 3 screws that attach it. 1, 2, 3. Notice that the middle screw is shorter than the outside screws. So once we remove those 3 screws, over on the right hand of this bar, there is a spring attached to it around a little hook. So we will take that little hook and remove it. And it slides out from the side. So this is the spring right here, and we'll set that to the side. Now with all those disconnected, there's one final screw that holds the damper housing into its place, and it is right here. We'll remove that screw and then continue on. Now that I have all my screws and all my connections removed, then I can grab it very gently by this and lift up, being careful not to snag anything. Make sure the wires don't get pulled off or even any of the ink tubes. When it comes straight up, it has a little bit of a catch on here, so you kind of have to tilt it backwards and just keep wiggling it out until it becomes free. And then once it lifts out, then I can start removing my ink tubes. All right. Before I remove or undo these set screws, I have to make sure to relieve pressure on my ink bottles, or the ink will drip out, and that could be a bad thing, especially if any of that ink drips on any of these FFC cables. So to relieve the pressure, what we will do is loosen the lids to the CMYK in the back here. So that takes the air pressure that is built up when the machine was turned on. Once that pressure is relieved, then I can start loosening my set screws right here. We'll slide that little collar back, and then the tubes come off. What I like to do is hold that tube up in the air a little bit, and I can watch the ink drain back down, so that way it doesn't drip on me. And then I'll go on to the next 3. Also note to be really careful with these elbows. They are made of plastic, so they can break or crack. We do have replacements if necessary. Hold that tube up a little bit, let that ink drain down. It's also a good idea to probably have some paper towels handy just in case you do get some dripping. For the last one. Well. Okay. So now that I have those CMYK ink tubes removed, then I can lift the entire carriage out of here. If your FFC cables are getting caught by this little black wire, you can take that little black wire, and there's a little hook right here that you'll have to pop it out of. So what I do is just push those wires towards the front of the machine. Doing them one at a time makes it a little bit easier. And then I can pull that wire back. Just note where they were actually hooked on before. So then I can actually lift this out. So now I can hold my damper and print head compartment up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to replace the head. This is where your number 1 Phillips head screwdriver comes in. It's got a smaller tip. So what we'll do is remove the 3 screws that hold that into place. Here, here, and here. Make sure to keep these screws separate from your others so they don't get mixed up. Once you have removed those 3 screws, you can lightly wiggle this back and forth, freeing the printhead from the dampers. You have 8 dampers. You have the 4 colors and then the 4 whites, and you notice that they're all in line with each other. So what we're going to do first is replace the head. So I'll set the damper housing to the side, and then I can look at the printhead. The printhead also has 3 set screws in it as well. They're a little bit smaller than the ones that we attached to the printhead carriage, or to the housing. It also will be a number 1 Phillips head. Once we've removed those 3 set screws, I can grab it by the printhead and lift it out of its housing, just wiggling it back and forth. I'll set the printhead to the side. You'll notice that there's little cushioning bushings in here. There's supposed to be 2 of them, but I just dropped one. So just be careful when you take that out. And notice how that they are placed in there. What that does is kind of catch any like overspray or anything like that, so it can't get up into this compartment. We'll set that to the side. Now on the printhead, you'll see where the FFC cables plug in. So as if the printhead was in the machine facing down like this, the number 0 will be on the bottom. When I pull this out, I grab it kind of in the middle and kind of wiggle it back and forth, making sure not to cause any damage to it. The second ribbon cable, which is towards the top of the machine, if it was in like this, is the 00. Same thing, you'll push it or pull it out, inspecting it for any kind of damage on the actual tips. If there's any kind of corrosion, ink, or a burn mark, then that's something that will definitely have to be replaced as well, and that will come in a later video. So now that I can look at my printhead, if this was a clogged printhead, I would grab a new one and put the new one in. But this one is fine, so I'm going to put this one back in. But I am going to clean up around the edges and things like that. So when I go to clean the edges of my printheads and stuff, I want to make sure not to scrape or wipe across this gold surface or dark gray surface, depending on which head you have in your machine. Alright, but I definitely want to use the DTG purple cleaning solution. So I can clean these little edges off, any kind of built up ink or anything like that. If it is dry, you can actually scrape it with your fingernail and get some of that off of there. This is something that you should be cleaning during your maintenance on a nightly basis. Just cleaning these little edges, the little grooves around the edge here. If it does have a buildup, just remove it. But never wipe across the bottom surface. If a piece of ink or dried ink gets on this surface, use a clean cloth and lightly wipe it away. I'll inspect it, make sure nothing's poking up. If there's any ink that may get on these connections here. If you do make a mistake and actually get ink or cleaning solution or any type of liquid on these connections, you need to let this dry for at least 24 hours before putting it back in. Now you may be asking yourself, if I let this printhead sit out for 24 hours, could it dry up? Yes, it could. So the moral of the story is make sure you do not get any fluid on these ribbons or the connectors. Alright, so now say this is a new printhead and I want to put this back into the machine. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these ribbon cables, the 0 and the 00, and put them back in the correct slots. Alright, like I said before, the 0 will be towards the floor, as if the printhead was in the machine, and then the 00 will be above it. To put these back in, the easiest way that I've found to do it is to do the 00 first, the top one. So what I do is bend that down, and you notice that the wire connections are facing towards the top. So what I have to do is flip the head over and make sure those little metal connectors line up properly. Being very gentle, and then just slowly work it in. Don't force it. Sometimes if you can't get it in there like this, if you flip it over, you can push it from the back here and it slides in. It'll have a little bit of a bite to it. Then I can fold these ribbon cables back and go on to the 0. Lining those up as well. Sliding them in gently. Never force it. So now that those are back in, now I can reattach my housing for it. Now when we're putting the printhead back into the machine, we will slide these little connectors in. They're not absolutely necessary, but they do help. So we'll line those up like so. And then we're going to take the head and put it back in. So when you're putting this back in, make sure to line up your screw holes, 1, 2, and 3. So there's only one way that it goes in. I slide that in there, like so. Then we can flip it back upside down and put our set screws back in, noting it is the smaller of the heads. So those are locked in tight. This can actually be put back onto the dampers and put back in the machine in reverse. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually remove the dampers and replace them. So with the head out, set it to the side so that way the surface isn't going to get scratched up or anything. And then we can slowly start to remove each one of these dampers. The first thing we'll do to remove those is I've already removed the ink tubes from those elbows. So now what I'll have to do is remove from the manifold itself. So when I remove this, it is a good idea to have paper towels handy. So that way you can catch any kind of dripping or anything. And then you'll slowly just pull these backwards. Kind of pinch it with your finger. Slide the tubing down off of it. Just be very gentle. As you're lifting, make sure that paper towel is handy. And then we can set that tubing to the side. Make sure that those connectors are facing up when you set it down, so that way there's no dripping. So now I have no ink tubes connected to the machine. You will need a pair of needle nose pliers to pull the little retaining bar out. You'll pinch it on one side and slide it out. You might have to push it from the other side to get it past its lip. Be careful not to bend it. And set that to the side. That's what keeps the dampers from tilting. Alright, so then I'll flip it up. You'll notice that there is a little retaining bar right here. Careful not to break it, but if you lift it backwards, you can grab each one of these dampers and pull it out, setting them to the side. Be very careful not to be over top of any kind of electronics or anything like that so you don't have any dripping. If you do push this little spring-loaded circle right here, it will drip from the damper itself. I'll go ahead and remove all of them. And then the colors. Note, if you're looking at this, this is how it would be sitting in the machine. The colors are to the left, the whites are to the right. And then it will start with yellow, magenta, cyan, and black. So you have to keep them in those order. So if you need to take a picture of it before you start, that might be a good idea. Once we remove the dampers, then we can replace them with the new ones. Like I said before, for the color dampers, they will have threads up at the top. For the white dampers, they will have a piece of heat shrink around those threads, so that way the tubing can fit around it. You can use the existing tubing that came off of the old dampers. You might want to rinse them out just in case they have some buildup on them. So, when you're putting them back on, you could take this piece of tube off, clean it out, make sure there's no ink in it. You can even take it over to your sink and rinse it out if necessary. And then you will work it over top of the new one. If you wet this just a little bit, it'll slide right over top. Since these dampers were in good shape, I'm just going to use my existing ones. So I'll slide this over, making sure that that tube goes all the way down to the base. Alright, and that's what it would look like. So now when we're going to put the dampers back in, we have to do it in reverse. Alright, if the elbows have been removed, it might be a little bit easier to get them to feed them up into here. I'll just do it with it just to see how hard it really is. So we spin that one sideways, pull back on the retaining bar a little bit, till it clicks right into place. Move on to the next one. Till it clicks into place. Go to black. Okay, and then the whites. Now you'll notice that the tubing that comes from the factory, they actually gradually get a little bit longer as it goes. So for the longer tube that sticks up a little bit further, you'll want those towards the outside, so that way it kind of ramps up. Alright, so I'll take my shortest tube and put it in first. And then last but not least, alright, then I'll make sure that all these are clicked into place so that little retaining bar holds them properly. It's very important that these are all in a very straight line, straight across from each other, so that way they will line up with the post on the head. And then if I look at it from the top, it'll look like this. These all face towards the right. And you can see that little ramp up right there. Alright, so now I'm going to put my little retaining bar back in. It slides through that little slot right there in the front, and it'll feed through. You might have to get a screwdriver or a pair of pliers to kind of push it behind each one of these posts. Can be a little bit of a pain. So as I'm feeding it through, once I get up to these little posts right here, I push it back. So that way it goes behind it until it gets all the way over here to the other side. And that way it makes those dampers stay straight when they're in the machine. Now we can actually put the head back onto the dampers. So what we're going to do is I'll set this little bracket to the side here, and I'm going to make sure that my head and my ribbon cables are not twisted. So as it comes up, I actually simulate as if it was in the head, and then I'm going to look at it to see how it would be, to make sure that those aren't twisted. So then I can lift it straight up. I can make sure that my screw holes line up here to here, and then the two in the back. But when I'm putting this on there, I want to verify that those posts hit the holes evenly. I don't want it to be to the side or anything like that, because that can cause dripping, and then if it leaks down there on those ribbon cables, it can burn out the head, the ribbon cables, as well as the main board. So I'll line up those posts, and then I'll kind of just wiggle it in there, and it should have a snug fit, just like so. Then I can replace my 3 screws. If I need to, I can set this down on its side. You don't want to over tighten these because you can actually strip out the screw holes. So just kind of finger tight. Okay, now once those are tight, flip it back around, make sure those ribbon cables are not being twisted. They'll basically look like this. Then I can place it back down into the head carriage. Make sure all the wires and stuff are out of the way, so that way you don't have to fish them out later. And then I'll slowly slide this down in here, making sure that it's not snagging anything or bending any of the connectors. And it basically drops down into place. The first screw that we're going to have to put back in is going to be a long threaded screw with a washer on it. It'll be a number 2 Phillips head. This screw will be placed right here into this little hole. That's what holds this whole bracket in place. You never really want to remove these blocks here because they've been factory set to keep this carriage in straight. Place that screw right down in there. Also do not want to over tighten it. There we go. Next, what we'll do is put back on the retainer bar. It'll be facing in this direction. So I'll place it right in here. So that way my screw holes line up. There will be 3 different type screws, 2 long and 1 short. The short one goes into the middle. So the first one I put in is one of the long ones, and it'll be towards the left hand side of the machine where that little dip down is. Tighten that one down. I try to leave it just a little bit loose so that way I can pivot this back and forth. The next thing I will do is take my little spring and put it on that little hook on the other side. First thing it goes to is here. And then if I need to, I can take some needle nose pliers, grab it by its little hook here, and put it on this other hook that's tucked underneath all the ink tubes. So it'll look just like this. Then I can put in my other 2 screws. I'll go with the outside one first, kind of pushing that bar forward. And last but not least, the shorter of the 3, right here in the middle. Now I can start to reconnect my connections. The first one I will do is this little black wire. And remember, the little black wire has that little hook right behind it. So what I'll have to do, the little hook is right here, is just kind of push one wire at a time up underneath it. Kind of tucks it out of the way for you. Push these ribbon cables out of the way. So now that those are up underneath that little hook, it will go towards the bottom connector. You'll also notice that it has a kind of raised up middle section here. That will be facing towards the top. You just push it straight into its connector. The next one will be the gray one with a little white one at the end. The white will be facing towards the right of the machine, and it will fit into the smaller set of holes here. We'll line those up, slide it on until it clicks right into place. Next, we will reattach the FFC cable. This FFC cable will line up the connectors perfectly before shoving it in, and gently place in there. And push straight back. See, what can happen is that front connector, if you don't line it up properly, can bend those FFC cables back, which is not good. If you mess them up enough, they would have to be replaced. But sometimes you can fold them back out, line it up properly, and then gently slide into its connector. There we go. Then we can put the FFC cable retaining bracket back in. A little black piece of plastic. It'll slide directly straight down and hook into place. So. Okay, next thing we'll do is do the manifold. The manifold does not go straight across like this. It'll have a turn to it. So we'll tuck our ink tubes underneath there, line up our little post with the tubing, and slowly push down on it. So nice, snug fit. Make sure there's no little gaps. Look at it from the front and back. Make sure that the tube is all the way up to like it looks like a nut. And then there we go. Now what I will do is reconnect the ink tubes one at a time. I'll start with black first because it's the closest. I can push this little manifold towards the front of the machine so that way I can line up the tube with the threads. Noting also that there is an O-ring inside these connectors. That O-ring has to be there or you'll have ink starvation. So what I do is feed it around the actual tube, and then when I line it up, it seals it. You want to make sure these are pretty good and tight, but you also want to be very careful not to bend the post itself because it can crack. I'll go with cyan next. Make sure that O-ring is on there. Next one will be magenta. And last but not least, yellow. Make sure they're all nice and tight. To double check. If I need to, I can use some pliers. Give it an extra turn, and those seem fine. Next thing we'll do is I'll fish my little blinky light back up through the middle here. There is a lot of slack on it, but that's okay. When I'm putting it back on, it's going to go into the middle one. So we'll just feed this through until it pokes out the top. Get my little O-ring, slide it over top. If you wet it a little bit, it'll actually slide smoother. And then what we'll do is just pull it back down until it stops. If I want to be all pretty with it, I make sure to kind of feed it in That way it doesn't poke up, and we're good to go. What we'll do with the slack is kind of tuck it up underneath these ink tubes. And then when I'm feeding these through, the color tubes will be inside, the white tubes will be going around the outside here. So I have to make sure that they're not twisted or stacked on top of each other. And when I'm sliding this down, I'll just be very conscientious. These two tubes will fit up into this little bracket right here. Slide them up. Alright. Until I get it down here, and that's what she'll look like. Then I'll put the 3 screws back into the cover. Making sure not to over tighten these as well, because you can crack this cover as well. And that last screw is in this corner. So I'll verify everything's tucked into the proper slots. Verify that the head can slide back and forth smoothly. I'll also make sure my encoder strip is not, or it's in its correct slot, that it slides through the little sensor properly. No weird noises. Click it back into place. And that's replacing the print head and dampers for a DTG Viper. Thank you.